Evening, it happened so long ago that many of the details are blurry now. It wasn't yesterday after all. I'll try to fill in the little gaps in my memory with what I believe actually happened. It was the last day of third grade. At our elementary school, third grade was the final year when kids still had to be picked up by a parent or guardian. Fourth graders were already allowed to walk home on their own. My mom usually picked me up. That day, my friend Jake and I had made plans to meet up afterward to celebrate the beginning of summer break. Jake wasn't in my class that year, but we had been friends since preschool. He always left the building through a different hallway. After the bell rang, our teacher, Miss Brown, lined us up and walked us down the corridor to the exit where parents were waiting. I was scanning the crowd, expecting to see Jake's dad, when someone suddenly called out, "Tommy! Tommy!" I turned and saw a man waving at me. He introduced himself as Jake's uncle and said he was picking me up that day. I went over to Miss Brown and told her someone had come for me. She asked, "Where is he, sweetheart?" I pointed at the man and he gave her a little wave. Miss Brown let me go, and I followed the man. He was weaving through the crowd quickly, speaking nervously, almost stuttering, and walking so fast it was hard to keep up with my backpack bouncing behind me. He explained that Jake's dad had to stay late at work, so he, the uncle, was taking me home instead. We walked to his car. I think it was a dark red hatchback, and that's when something clicked in my mind. Where was Jake? Why didn't we pick him up too? The man glanced at me and said Jake was already at his house. I was shy around unfamiliar adults and didn't always speak up when I was confused. But now I was really confused. Things started to feel off. The whole ride he kept talking, non-stop. He rambled about his old school days, asked me what games I played, what we were learning in class. It felt like we drove for 10 minutes, which was a long time for our small town, where most homes were packed closely together. My house was only 5 minutes walk from school. I knew we weren't anywhere I recognized. The town was called Glenwood, and our school, Woodland Park Elementary, was small and cozy, with a yellow brick exterior and flower beds near the entrance. But where he might taking me, it was out on the edge of town. No familiar streets, no shops, no kids. He parked in front of a house that looked pretty normal. We went inside and he locked the door behind us. It was dark inside. I realized all the curtains were closed. It felt like nighttime, even though it wasn't. The only light came from a dim lamp in the corner of the room. He looked at me and smiled. I asked, "Where's Jake?" And he got even more nervous and strange. He mumbled something like, "Oh, he's probably downstairs playing video games. Wait here." Then he went into another room. I heard a door open and his footsteps heading down some stairs. My heart was pounding. I knew something was wrong. I quietly walked to the front door and tried the knob, but it was locked with a key. Panic set in. Still, I held on to a small hope that Jake might appear, though I knew it wasn't likely. I regretted stepping into that house. I did the only thing I could think of. I went to the kitchen and saw a landline phone mounted on the wall. I picked it up and dialed 911. The first thing I whispered was, "Please come to this house. I've been kidnapped." They heard me. They confirmed they understood, but I didn't say more. I hid the phone under a towel on the counter, leaving the line open. Then I hurried back to the living room. I could already hear him coming back upstairs. He called out, "Come on down, Jake's downstairs." Pause, he called again, and when I didn't respond, he walked out to find me. He asked if I was okay. I felt terrible. I was scared. I hated myself for getting into this situation. Very quietly, nervously, I asked if I could leave, and I'll never forget how his face changed. The smile vanished. He slowly stepped closer, calm on the outside, then suddenly grabbed my arm and dragged me toward the basement door. I screamed and cried, and he yelled back, "I'll let you go if you behave." I went silent and walked down the stairs. The door slammed shut behind me and locked. The basement was unfinished, just bare concrete, one post in the middle of the room. The only light came from a dim yellow bulb on the ceiling. If you imagine a basement where someone would hide a kidnapped kid, this was exactly that. I could hear him moving around upstairs. After a while, he came to the door and asked, "Are you hungry?" I said no. I was terrified he'd noticed the missing phone. He shut the door again and locked it. I sat there, my heart pounding in my throat. Then I heard it. 3 knocks at the front door. Then loud pounding. It was the police. I didn't yell at first, not until I heard the door actually open. I hadn't heard his footsteps go toward it. The knocking and banging kept going. It lasted a while, until suddenly there was a loud crash, footsteps, and shouting. I screamed at the top of my lungs, pounding on the door. It flew open, and a police officer pulled me out. Outside, there were 3 police cars. I told 2 officers everything that had happened while we waited for my parents. They led the man out in handcuffs. That was the last time I ever saw him. When my parents arrived, my mom was sobbing. The school was in chaos too. The police had gone there, and Jake's dad realized what had happened. It turned out the man was a coworker of Jake's dad. When he found out Jake's dad was picking us up that last day, he decided to take advantage. A truly sick person. I never found out how he knew what I looked like. As I got older, I never asked. The memories were too painful. My mom took me to therapy for months afterward. Let's just say my parents didn't have kind words for Miss Brown, who let me leave with someone she didn't confirm I knew. If I hadn't made that call before he locked me in the basement, I know for a fact I wouldn't be here today. That was around 17 years ago. He might be out of prison by now. I don't know. It happened back in high school on our very last school day. A lot of students either didn't show up at all or left right after lunch. My friends and I were among those who bailed early. The weather was gloomy, heavy clouds, distant thunder. Some classmates had planned a trip to the lake, but the storm canceled that quickly. We didn't want the day to go to waste, so we came up with another plan. There used to be this old elementary school on the edge of town. It had been abandoned for at least a decade and was scheduled to be torn down by the end of the year. So to mark the end of our school days with something memorable, we decided to sneak inside. No cameras, no security, and in this weather, no one would be watching the property. We all left after lunch. Our buddy Jake had a car and his license, so he drove us out there. The school sat in a residential neighborhood, away from any main roads. Around the back was a ramp covered in overgrown bushes and a couple of side entrances. It was the perfect spot to park without being seen. The building wasn't boarded up, just locked. Jake had brought a baseball bat in his trunk, and the plan was to break a window to get in. I was super nervous. Even with the rain pouring down, I worried someone might hear the glass breaking. We huddled around as Jake took a few solid swings. The window cracked, then shattered. He cleared the jagged edges with the bat and waved us in. We crawled through one by one. My internal justification was, they're gonna demolish it anyway. What harm could a broken window do? The room we entered was clearly a classroom. Desks, faded posters, old schoolwork still on the walls. Judging by the setup, it looked like a 4th or 5th grade class. It felt surreal being there. A space once full of life and kids, now dark, dusty, and forgotten. The thunder rumbling outside only made it more eerie. There was no power in the building. We assumed it had been cut off years ago, but our phone flashlights were enough to get around. Even without them, faint light filtered in through the windows. We started exploring, moving from room to room. Each classroom was filled with old desks and furniture that hadn't been touched in years. As we entered one hallway, a sound suddenly echoed from somewhere nearby. We froze, turned off our lights. A flash of lightning followed, and we assumed it must have just been debris or the wind. We kept walking, shoes squelching on the wet, dusty floors. The whole place was falling apart. Walls cracked, mold creeping up, everything thick with dust. At one point, I turned around to glance down another hallway and saw something poking out from one of the classroom doors. I motioned for the others to look. They shined their lights toward the door. Whatever it was, it instantly pulled back out of view. We all whispered, "What the hell?" and quickly ran down the cross hall. It seemed like we'd entered the kindergarten wing, and suddenly we heard another strange sound, deeper this time, almost like a low creak. Someone was in there. But who? Everything was locked, no lights anywhere. We ducked into the nearest room, closed the door behind us, and stayed quiet. It looked like a preschool classroom. Toys still in corners, faded alphabets along the walls. We were terrified that someone might call the cops, so we kept quiet. No flashlights, just heavy breathing. Outside, the storm raged. Thunder rolled every few seconds. Then, the door latch clicked, and the door slowly creaked open. Beyond it, pitch black. We didn't move, barely breathed. Then suddenly, a head peeked through the doorway, just staring straight at us. We caught it in a lightning flash. It was someone, a real person. I started apologizing, saying we were leaving, but the figure didn't say a word, just watched us. Jake asked, "Do you work here?" Still no response. Then he shoved the bat into my hand, went to pry open a window, and slipped out first. One by one we followed. I was the last. Before leaving, I glanced back one more time. The person was still there, unmoving in the doorway. I scrambled out, half expecting someone to grab my legs. We all ran for Jake's car, jumped in, and peeled out of there. Didn't look back once. That school got demolished later that year and turned into a community park. We never got in trouble for what we did, but to this day, none of us know who that was. A worker, a squatter, something else. Whoever it was, the way they just stood there was seriously the creepiest thing I've ever seen. When I was a freshman in college, I took a chemistry course. It was really tough for me. The classroom tables were arranged in groups of 4. I sat at the table on the far left, right at the end. Next to me sat a guy named Ethan. He was incredibly awkward, reminded me of a Reddit moderator. He was about 5 feet 8 inches, a little overweight, with a really uneven and unattractive beard. But he was good at chemistry. Honestly, I think he was just a good student overall. We started talking in a casual way when he noticed I was struggling in class. He offered to help me. He started doing my homework and even let me cheat off him during tests. I never sensed any romantic interest from Ethan. Maybe he was too socially awkward to show it. Eventually, he asked for my number so he could send me homework answers. Of course, I gave it to him. He helped me a lot, and he didn't seem threatening at all. He came off as a bit of a loner. Then on the last day of class, Ethan made a move I wasn't expecting. He asked if I wanted to go out with him after class. I wasn't attracted to him at all, and our personalities were polar opposites. But he had helped me so much that I wanted to turn him down gently. So I lied and said I was going to Miami for a couple of weeks. He immediately asked, "What about when you get back?" And I started to feel like 2 weeks wasn't going to be enough for him to lose interest. So I said something vague like, "Maybe I'll be in town, we'll see." He just nodded awkwardly. It was super awkward until the class ended. As soon as it was over, I rushed to my car and left. I was a commuter student, so that was the end of my semester. It was Thursday, and later that night, my friends, who also went to the same school, wanted to go out and hang. While we were out, I got a text from Ethan. "When are you going to Miami?" I told my friends about him, how he helped me with tests and now wanted to go on a date. They joked that I should say yes, just to be polite. I laughed, said maybe, and planned to reply later. But I got drunk and forgot. The next morning, I woke up to 2 texts. One said, "What?" The other said, "Are you not going to reply to me now that you don't need anything from me?" I responded, "Sorry, I'm packing. I'm leaving for Miami today." He replied instantly, "Okay." Of course, there was no Miami trip, but he didn't know that. That evening, my friends and I went out again. While we were at the bar, I got a really creepy message from Ethan. "I thought you said you were leaving for Miami today." I nearly dropped my drink when I saw that. I showed the message to my friends and they were shocked too. I replied, "What do you mean?" He answered, "Never mind. Forget it. I just don't like liars." That's when I genuinely got scared, like someone was watching me. I looked around the bar, but I didn't see him, so I didn't respond. By that point, I had already decided I wouldn't reply to him again. But around 1 a.m., just as I took off my shoes at home, someone knocked on my door. It was about 1 in the morning. I asked, "Who is it?" And from the other side, I heard Ethan's voice. "It's me." I nearly screamed. I was home alone. I shouted through the door, "Leave, or my dad will come out and beat your ass." That seemed to work. He didn't knock again. I told everyone I knew about it, family, friends. I was scared. Some told me to call the police. I said I'd go to the nearest station the next day. But the next day didn't have a normal start. I got a long, disgusting message. I was shocked when I read it. It said, "I'm feeling a lot right now after being used, lied to, and hurt for an entire month. Since the beginning of the semester, I thought our connection was special. I took huge risks with my academic standing just to help you. I noticed the way you looked at me in class. I thought there was something there. All I'm asking for is just one date. That's it. I'm not asking for marriage, though honestly, I'd make a great husband. I'm giving you a bit more time to think it over. I know I have a lot more to offer than all those losers around campus. If you want, I can come over and we can talk about it in person. I'm only making this offer once. It hurts that I put in all that effort for nothing. Sincerely, Ethan." I sent the message to everyone. I didn't care that it was 3 a.m. I called my dad and told him how scared I was. After reading the message, he wrote a long one back to Ethan and called him around 10 times. Ethan didn't pick up. The next day, I went to the police with the message and said I wanted to file a report. One of the officers said they'd reach out to him. Ethan never replied to the police or to my dad's calls. He completely disappeared. I never saw him again, not on campus, not anywhere else. Now I know what it's like to have a real stalker,